Hello, everyone. Thank you. Happy Friday. So, for those of you that are new to this series, my name is Alva Vasquez. Today is Planning for Success. I am very grateful to UCLA, UCI, Southern California, NIOSH Education and Research Center, the work that Veronica, Liz, Annie, and everybody has put in the past and right now to make this webinars work and to bring safety to the workplaces, to the workers, to the people that need it the most. I'm honored, like I said. It's been a while that we've been working together, so thank you. Happy holidays to everyone. I hope you received my newsletter. If you are not receiving my monthly newsletter, please make sure you let me know because that is a separate mailing list that I have just for my newsletter. I do not inundate you with any different kinds of emails. Once a month, you're going to receive just one page from me. And what I do is I put there an idea of what's going on or something that is important. And for this month, December 1st, my newsletter had to do with mental health and the stress that the holiday season brings to the table. You're going to see that that is actually part of some of the news in the updates that we have from Cal OSHA and OSHA websites. It is a beautiful time. It is a happy time, but it's also a stressful time. And we all know it. There's pressure, right, to be happy. And sometimes the added pressure to produce and the workloads that are a little bit more heavier during the holidays, plus financial stress, plus family stress, they all become this recipe for added stress and mental health issues. So I'm very glad to see you all. As you know, I answer questions as we go right along. This is, if you want to unmute yourself or raise your hand or put it in the chat, it will be wonderful. So I don't mind. It's all about you, your questions, and what you need. Okay, so thank you for those of you that submitted questions also prior to today's session. So there's my information. You will receive a copy of the slides today. So if you need to look me up either in my website or also OSHA.gov has a page specifically to give you a list of trainers who still have status as outreach OSHA trainers. And that's my authorization number on the screen. It is good to know that OSHA does have a list of authorized trainers in case you are thinking of putting together a 10-hour or a 30-hour OSHA class, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, for those of you that have never heard of that class, yes, we do talk about safety for 10 hours or 30 hours for that matter, but we try to make it fun, as those of you know that have been on these classes or on these sessions are short, and sometimes we just have so much material, we have so much to talk about. But the whole purpose is that we all speak the same language, and that language is safety, keeping the workers at every single workplace safe. And so when you take or you put together a 10-hour class, either in English or Spanish, we can do it in either language. You contact Veronica and she'll help you with the logistics. We'll put it together, either going to your workplace or setting it up in a venue of your choice. That way, everyone starts speaking the same language. We all know what these updates are all about, what the regulations say, why do we do things the way we do them, etc. So today, my objectives are as follows. So number one, navigate the Cal OSHA's training matrix. Let me tell you, it's a long list of training requirements. So you're sitting here, it's December 2024, you're thinking, okay, the whole year is around the corner, new year 2025, and I need to plan, and I have a budget for safety. All of you on this call, your company has a budget for safety. Make use of it. Make use of it in two ways. One, prepare by making a list of your safety activities that you want for the year. And in those safety activities, allocate money for training and allocate money for outsourcing services, because you may be really needing an industrial hygienist to go out there to your workplace because of a new requirement. Today, we're going to talk about some of these new requirements so that you start planning and you successfully enter 2025 with a plan. So those who fail to plan are planning to fail. I think that's how the saying goes. If it doesn't, you can just put it in the chat. You know, always my English starts acting up at some point during the talk. So if you don't understand something, let me know. What did she say? We'll clarify it. So number one, navigate Kalosha's training matrix so that we identify those require training topics. Some of you think that if it's not in the requirements, then, you know, may not be important. Things such as the code of safety practices. Oh my gosh, who wants to train workers on what the code of safety practices say? I'll just let them read it when they get their employee manual. Well, I'll talk about why it is important that you have it as part of your explanation of your injury and illness prevention program. So there's always that extra need or nuances that are not very explicit or explained within that Cal/OSHA matrix. So that's where outsourcing or help consultants really come in handy, right? So when are you ready? What should you do? Is it a combination, just you because you are now the safety department, or you should have help? We'll talk about that. We're going to locate that matrix in the Cal/OSHA website and understand some of those frequency requirements for training. I wanted to create a basic annual safety training calendar, but strike that and put create a basic annual safety activities and training calendar, because in your safety activities, you should also make sure that you allocate time for safety inspections. Without those safety inspections, your entire 2025 will not be completed and you will be successfully finding those things that are important, either new requirements or things that you didn't know are missing in your safety programs and that may cause trouble in the future. And I'll talk about it. I'll give you some examples. So I want you to have a map of those mandatory topics and then just put them on some specific months. So we're going to talk about what's a good idea, biannual, by monthly, quarterly. What is it that works? Plan for recurrent training requirements. Some of them are very clear in the regulation for for annual training requirements, but some are not. Some are not. They will just say initial, right? And so we're going to talk about how that works and what is it that I advise you guys to do. And so I want you to be able to identify when and how to effectively utilize either a consultant or any other specialist, right? So we want to make sure that you get the help you need. That may be in the form of, you know, I just realized I brought this new process and it generates dust. So we're looking at a respiratory protection program that we may be needing, etc. So you may need monitoring, air monitoring, right? And so it is important that you know if you can handle some things internally versus what you should be outsourcing, and recognizing where the value is at so that you can budget for those purposes. So first things first, like I said, there is some updates. I want you to be very familiar. Those of you that are safety directors, those of you that are tasked with putting together your 2025 calendar or your safety activities for next year, one of the things that I want you to do is put it in your calendar for you to check at least bi-weekly. Once a month, I think it's fine, but some of you may even want to check weekly. So the bigger your company and the more responsibilities, the more you want to be on top of things, especially if you have a lot of hats to wear and a lot of responsibilities. So, for example, smaller clinics, when I have a medical offices or clinics, recently I had a client, they are an ambulatory surgical center. They have several establishments throughout California. And so they have one person in charge of safety mainly. Okay, so she wears a lot of hats. She's doing a lot. So I asked her to do this checking on the website at least once a week. And when I say checking in the websites, you get also email notices from Cal/OSHA. Well, that's not enough. You need to get up there and check and refresh yourself. And for those in the medical field, would be also checking in the California Department of Public Health news releases, and also subscribe, because you need to stay on top of what's new. And sometimes, as you will see, once you've planned for 2025 for a whole year, some things come about that are new and you may be tweaking what you're doing for that month or for that quarter. Okay, so let me take you to just those things in the page. If you've never visited CalOSHA, and please raise your hand if you've visited the CalOSHA website. Throughout the years, the CalOSHA website has changed a lot. And we see that the CalOSHA website is so much more helpful nowadays. So the website is not just for CalOSHA. It has several tabs, and it includes labor law, workers' compensation, self-insurance, apprenticeship, etc., boards, different things. But when you go to the tab for CalOSHA Safety and Health, this is their homepage or the main page, and you are going to have a lot of good stuff and news there. So when you start planning for 2025, you also want to know, okay, aside from what's already required, what I already know on my side, the list of topics and things that I know I have to do for 2025, what else is new? What's out there that I may need to look at? So here on the feature safety and health guidance and resources, you're going to get an idea of where CalOSHA is throwing some light and some new things that you need to take into account. So there's been some of these topics on the feature safety and health guidance and resources have been there for a while. So those are not marked with a little red dot that says new. So avian influenza is there as new because of some outbreaks, and that has to do with work settings and farms and places where there's cattle that is being handled and people get in close contact with animals where the respiratory droplets from the animals may also make people sick. Because as we know, viruses are a funny thing, and although they're tissue specific and species specific, sometimes they mutate. And in this case, we do have cases of avian influenza that human beings are getting. So a lot of that in there. And as you go down, there's the cannabis, coronavirus information for those of you that need to update your policies. So CalOSHA stopped requiring an actual separate program for COVID-19 prevention, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have anything. You should still have a policy or include it in your IIPP. But I don't know if those of you that have been doing safety for a while know this, but there's a ton of stuff that CalOSHA will say, you don't need to have a separate policy. You can include it in your IIPP. That is so confusing. I don't like it because your IIPP is a standalone document with 8 elements, as you've seen during the classes. We've had full IIPP classes through the UCLA, UCI, Southern Education Research Center. If you're interested in a class for you to put together your IIPP, let us know because we do have some dates coming up with that. So the coronavirus, you can take a look at there. Domestic workers and day laborers, that's interesting for those of you that have employed people that work alone as domestic workers. It's great info in there. Ebola virus information, because realize the following: CalOSHA is protecting all workers in California. So that's why they're even including now the domestic workers. This came about probably a year ago. Ebola virus information, experimental variances from California. That's an interesting one. So anytime a company is trying to put together a new product for safety, they may be putting together some experiments where employee safety may be at risk. So some variances are, a variance is a document that CalOSHA will extend, giving permission, given the fact that the employer is making sure that there's nobody that gets hurt, but that you are kind of not compliant exactly with whatever regulation is your experiment all about, so that they can extend a document to exempt you as long as you have provisions in place for the safety of your workers. So that's an interesting one. Heat illness prevention, as you all know, since July 2024, we have a new rule for indoor heat illness. And it's very interesting. It's winter, right? But we're in California, sunny California. It's beautiful outside. I'm looking at my window here and it's just awesome. So sunny. I'm getting hot in the sweater. Even during the winter and starting early spring, we will have some hot days. And so you have to be ready. So a lot of the feedback that I'm getting from some of my clients is, well, it's winter, so let's just talk about this topic when we get towards the summer months. And I go, and the reason why I say no is start tackling it now for your safety activities. Now is the time. And yes, training, you can go towards, April and May, so you're ready for the summer. But some of you have indoor settings where there is heat all year round, right? So there's processes that you have. Let's say you're a brewery, so you have fermentation tanks and mixing tanks that are going on all year round. And this is why the regulation was put in place, so that all year round we are protecting workers who are working near the sources of radiant heat. So you cannot wait till the summer months, although during the summer months it gets even hotter. You have to start now, and this is implemented and in place now. So I'm mentioning this because in your 2025 calendar, you must make sure that you do not leave it till the summer, especially if your processes are producing heat indoor all year round. Lead. Oh my goodness. So the next one on your screen is lead. If you click on that, you will get lost forever and never come back because there is so much information about the updates for lead. So let me just tell you that the permissible exposure limit changed drastically. Federal OSHA is still at 50 micrograms per cubic meter in a time-weighted average, and it went all the way down to 10. That is very restrictive. And so although there was a lot of going back and forth, California put this in place, and it's going to be enforced starting January 1st, 2025. And you're thinking, well, but I don't deal with lead. Okay, so many times we don't know. So it would be good for you to take a look at what this is all about. So there's several regulations. There's a couple for general industry and the construction one as well. So at least 3 that were modified, and there's not a final set of materials for the general industry, but you can read the construction updated version of the regulation for lead, where the PEL was changed, and also the action level. For those of you that do not know what I'm talking about, an action level is kind of like your yellow light. So if you think about a traffic light, red means stop. Legally, you cannot expose workers beyond this limit. Yellow is kind of your action level. So you hit this number, that means you're exposing workers to a lot of this contaminant, and we need to do air monitoring and put certain provisions in place. In this case, the action level for lead also changed drastically, and it's down to 2 micrograms of 2 micrograms of air per cubic meter time weighted average. So a lot of information. The regulation is filled with appendices, and I'm not kidding you. I think it's about 100 pages. It's one of these. Lead is one of the regulations that is very detailed, and that's because of the seriousness of the exposure. So it brings damage to the person who's exposed, their nervous system, their cardiovascular system, their kidneys, etc. So there's a lot of information to look at. Whenever there's so many interesting things coming up with the lead new regulation, and there will be more materials. So that's why I said check the websites. People in construction, and sometimes if you're not in construction, you think, well, we're not in construction, so that will not apply to us. But you don't know, for example, that your maintenance workers are doing some construction activities, such as, welding, cutting, using torches, etc., on scrap metal or materials that contain lead. Yeah. Oh, okay. So although I'm not in the construction industry, but we are working on materials that contain lead, the regulation applies to me. I am actually doing work for a client, and I love when cities ask me to come on board and help. And their police department, they have a whole shooting range, and they also clean weapons, etc. There's the exposure to the lead dust from it. Okay, they that's presumed to have high levels of lead, and that is included in the general industry regulation that is coming up. So certain provisions need to be in place to protect the workers that you did not have to have in place before. All of this. So if you didn't take a look at this thing that we're explaining right now, that I'm taking time to explain, you wouldn't have an idea of what you need to modify for 2025. And if you go every single year with the same calendar you did the year before, you're gonna end up missing stuff. Respirable crystalline silica, we had a big class last year. It was a wonderful 4-hour class where we went over the standard, the emergency standard, why, and we talked a lot about the manufacturing of countertops, right? And why respirable crystalline silica present in 10% of those materials or higher is contained within this new rule. And manufactured countertops are about 80-90% of silica containing materials. A compound, but it's man-made. It's not like granite that is mined, and the silica content is way lower. So take a look at that as well. And the last one is for healthcare, tuberculosis testing requirements under the aerosol transmissible disease standard. So if you're in healthcare, take a look at that. Tells you how to make this testing requirements available annually, who should be this made available to. So great information. You're thinking, oh, this is good. So now in one of my quarterly safety trainings, I have to make sure that when I do my annual aerosol transmissible disease training, I make sure I include the TB testing requirements and I explain and make it available, because OSHA is going to be quite stringent on that. I love sharing this news. I love kind of give you an overview of what's going on with OSHA. Like I said, yes.
Before moving on, we do have somebody with their hand up. I believe Matthew has a question.
Yes, please. Go ahead, Matthew.
Sorry, I think that was just when you had asked earlier about whether I'd looked at the website, at the OSHA website.
Oh, that's all wonderful. Thank you. Oh, you're so good to me.
I guess I forgot to put my hand down.
Not a problem. I love it, Matthew. It means you guys are listening, and I love it. And what did you think, by the way? Have you seen changes? Do you like it now more than you did before?
You know, I had looked at it over time, but hadn't looked at it recently. And so that's really good. The things that you've highlighted are really, really helpful. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate your input. The whole purpose of this webinar is to make safety practical, to really give you some tools for real life, because it is a lot. It's too much sometimes.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. All right. I love the actual exchange. So please, if you have any comments, there's a lot of experience if you think about the many years in safety with people in this call. So I love when you jump in. So step one, now that we talked about, okay, so now I looked at what's new, and I am keeping updated by receiving all of my emails, my email notices from OSHA, my email notices from, it could be from your trade association, right? It could be from the California Department of Public Health. Wherever you're getting news, make sure that you do not just send those to the junk folders, but you're also reading it, because it'll bring those flags to tell you, maybe I need to talk about this on my next safety meeting. So prioritize. First of all, we need to identify our needs, right? And in order to identify needs, we got to look at our past. We'll look at our history. What has happened to us in the past? So every time I actually go out there to see a client, I always ask, any recent incidents or near misses? And if you're my client, you know that I've asked you that question, because it is important for us to keep an eye out on what just happened. It gives us a ton of information. And that's why you have to have a good incident investigation process, right? So that whatever goes in your OSHA logs and your workers' compensation logs gives you that 2020 hindsight that you're, oh, okay, so we had a couple of burns last year. We need to take a look at the step-by-step standard operating procedures with this machine because we got a couple of burns, or we got 3 slip, trips, and fall during the first quarter. Why is that happening? Oh, well, you know what? When we load our trucks and the workers get on the back of the truck to retrieve materials or product, they are slipping and falling because there's poor organization inside the truck. So this is fantastic. It just allows you to take a look at your past and prioritize, because if you go straight to the OSHA matrix, you're going to find it a bit overwhelming. You're going to feel, oh my goodness, this is a little too much. How do I start, right? So let me just show you something here. Yeah. I just wanted to check that I didn't have the link there and I skipped it. Okay, so look for clues as well, you know, unsafe conditions, worker fatigue, and you're going to find this list is straight from the OSHA e-tool for identifying needs. Many times when you find that you're having a lot of turnover, absenteeism, worker turnover rates, customer complaints, that's a sign. What's going on in this department? What do we need to change? And many times it has to do with, you know, we're not meeting production demands. We have too little people here and they're getting hurt and we're getting complaints, etc. So this first slide allows you to take a look at your history to identify needs and prioritize. Okay, number 2. Okay, now that I made a list of the things that have happened in the past that we need to prioritize for our 2025 safety activity calendar, we also need to know what else. And to know what else, we have to know the hazards present at our facilities. So walking the walk, talking the talk, going out there and talking to the workers. Many times we do not have the specialty to know what each department is doing, but by just walking around with your safety director, or with the person who heads that department, they'll explain it to you. They'll take the time because they love talking about what they do there. And take the time to really understand it. So in this case, for example, we take a look at whether or not we need to prioritize painting lines for the forklifts to go back and forth. Then we take a look at some of the areas where the chemicals are being handled and where, okay, so why are these bottles of Norox, you know, being stored here? And then you look at the safety data sheet and you see that they should be stored locked in an anti-corrosive type of cabinet. And you're thinking, okay, so there's some needs here, chemical safety. I know we have something coming up for training regarding hazard communication. It has to do with chemical safety. By the way, we also have a class for chemical safety, hazard communication, for you to understand the requirements, right? Because the handling of chemicals, it is so common for all types of industries. Is one of those horizontal standards that applies to every single place of employment, because we all handle chemicals, from hand sanitizer to solvents and things that are much more hazardous, such as this particular product on your screen, right? Because look at all the circle, the red circle that I put there, all of those pictograms. So it's there's the exclamation, the corrosive, the health hazard, and there's another one at the beginning that I can't tell, but it probably is flammability because it says MEKP, which is one of those liquids that has an interesting, it can very easily get in combination with air, and given an ignition source, it can actually create a fire. So all of those things, and you find these things by walking the walk, by talking with workers. Step 3, finding the requirements. So here, now you made your list of things that you want to prioritize. You have kind of like a map that you put together for 2024. Now you want to update it for 2025. You made your list. You looked at the new things that are required. And now you go and review the matrix by OSHA. So this one has been there for a long time. And it's a good one, but it is lengthy. And what happens is you may get lost because you're, okay, so wait a minute, there's so many training topics here. And then you take a look at how long the list is. I don't want to make you dizzy, but as I scroll down, you can tell that it is lengthy. Nevertheless, I think it's a very useful matrix, because what you can do is, if it's just you or if you have an assistant, you can actually take a look at each of these training topics and then go by departments and create your own matrix, right? The helpfulness of this tool is that, for example, for incident investigation, and I don't call it accident because OSHA, especially federal OSHA, says Accidents, the definition, Webster's definition is kind of like act of God, you could have never foreseen it, you know, versus incident. When we say incident investigation, the word incident triggers more the definition of something that is 100% preventable. So your incident investigation, it says here that the Title 8 section, where is the requirement for me to do something about it? Well, that's 3203A7F, which is for the injury and illness prevention program that mandates that you have a process for accident investigation. I like to say incident investigation. When should you train? Initially. It doesn't say annually, just initially. So whenever you assign a worker, so this is the key. If you're assigning a worker to do incident investigation, most of the time it would be your supervisors. If you're saying, okay, so all of my head of departments, the heads of departments are going to be the supervisors in charge of investigating any incident that occurs in their department, then you have to give them the tools. You have to train them on the incident investigation process. You have to have a step-by-step. I really advise you to have a plan or a policy separate from the injury and illness prevention program. Of course, you could just briefly describe it, which, by the way, I do that for all of my clients. We briefly describe what we do for incident investigation, but we have a separate policy that explains so that we can train supervisor on how to do this. So it's required initially. And so what happens with many of these topics that you can see here that it says initial for acrylonitrile, which is a specific chemical, initial and annual, you will have some specific either handling of chemicals or specific topics, for example, lockout, tagout, bloodborne pathogens, or specific chemicals that will ask you to do it initially, but also annually. And the reason for that, for the requirement to be done at least once a year, is because we forget things. So my take on these things, certain topics need to be reviewed once a year, even if the requirement is not there. For example, as you look at your past and the history of all of your injuries and incidents, let's say that your OSHA log says you had 3 back injuries and all of them say back strain, back strain, back strain. Well, there's 3 of them. The 3 of them couldn't have been exactly identical, right? And so you dig a little bit more, you look into not just your OSHA logs, but you get into the actual 1-page report of injury or the doctor's first report and the DWC-1. So you look at more documents and you look at the information that was first inputted, and you realize that of those 3 injuries, the information doesn't allow you, safety director, to really differentiate how did these people get hurt. So this one says that he got hurt lifting. This one says that he was lifting material. And this one says here, a coworker was helping and he got hurt lifting. So the 3 of them were lifting, but there's no true difference between the 3 of them. So it allows you to say, I need to train my supervisors again on incident investigation because I'm not getting very good information versus people that just did recent incident investigation. They'll go over their reports and they will see single team lift. I mean, single lift, no. Single lift. Worker lifted, and let's say was a heavy box or a window, or whatever he was going to install by himself when the standard operating procedure for that particular lift was to call a team of 2. All of a sudden, this injury tells you that there's a problem with communicating information as to when a person should seek the help of others to perform a lift. And then the next one, person was working on machine A when she felt a pull in his or her back as she tried to lift something off the conveyor belt. Now there's more information about it and it's more specific and it allows you to tackle each of those. And maybe the third one has to do it again with single versus team lift. And you know that, okay, so I do have a problem there. I'm going to prioritize that for 2025. We're going to create videos, and one will be how to do single lifts and the other one will be how to do team lifts. And then we're going to create a 1-page handout for the workers to know when single lifts are performed and when the weight of whatever they're lifting goes over this much, then they have to call a team of 2 or a team lift. And so by this information, you get so much to plan for 2025. You realize that you need to make your incident investigation requirement for frequency of training, not just initial for supervisors, but also annually. And this is one of those that I do highly recommend that it is done once a year, not just initially, because supervisors are super busy, lead people are super busy, and they, filling out forms and incidents is not something that they do every day. So they will be busy. And when you ask, for example, root cause, they may say poor training, right? Poor training, or recommend what are the actions to take place, and they say something like, we had a 5-minute tailgate meeting, versus they actually do a root cause analysis and they came back with 3 different things that are missing. Number 1, standard operating procedure is missing, which product needs to be done by single versus team lift. So all of that. And I know it's kind of like a long explanation, but it really highlights the importance of looking at this matrix and seeing that although certain things only say initial, one of the best practices out there for safety people is to do an annual reminder, especially on things that they're having a lot of exposure, or that you're seeing that a refresher is needed. For example, when you talk about heat illness, I would really, although it says initial and annual, I would do it at least biannually, especially because in the beginning of the year, you're gearing towards the summer days. And then towards September here in California, we always have some very hot days. So I will do an extra reminder towards the fall so that people stay safe. So there's, as you can tell, the training topics are listed in alphabetical order. So you can take a look at all of them, and you can create your own Excel sheet and add a column for your departments. So that's the examples that I have on my next slides. And if you have more questions, just ask me. But I hope this is kind of opening your mind as to, okay, so this is step by step. Step 4, now that you did your determining needs, right? You went through your inspections. You talked about, okay, this is the OSHA website. This is their matrix of all the things that need to be done. What of these topics, which of these topics can I do in-house? Which of these topics do I need to outsource because I need someone else to come and help us and talk about this? And sometimes, although you're fully capable of tackling all of your training topics, you may want, because there's a lack of compliance, you may want to outsource it and have someone else come and do the topic for you, which helps a lot. I'll give you an example. Compressed air. That's one of those topics that is quick and easy. You talk about compressed air safety and not blowing the dust off of your clothes with compressed air, but you see a lot of lack in compliance from the employees, and you're tired of telling them not to do something. Well, adding that as part of the training topics that an consultant or a safety person outside of your company does during your quarterly meetings will be great. Taking pictures and videos, and also highlighting the need of better communication or training whenever you do or you outsource safety inspections. So you do your own internal, but you also have someone else walk with you so that the employees see also that, hey, there's this new person walking around with our safety director. They're taking pictures, they're taking video. We better shape up, right? There's a feeling of that. And then especially if you add that, just like the requirement of the injury and illness prevention program, to a recognition program where it's not just, the stick, but also the carrot, stick and the carrot, where you continue to say to people, we are improving safety. And here is the recognition for 2024 for the people, the 5 workers who attended every single training session, and you give them a reward. And so imagine if it's a good reward. I mean, if you're going to give them a $20 card, that's not going to be like, woohoo, right? But if there is this sense, like, I'm not missing any of the trainings because at the end of the year, they give you a really good bonus, or they raffle at TV just amongst the workers who never missed the training. Oh my goodness. trust me, I'm not going to miss that training. So now that you're ready to develop your training curriculum, you make your lists, because not everything from that long list from Cal OSHA will apply to you, right? So now you make your list and you find out which of those topics you need to do annually. And you go through that thought process that I guided you through. Some of these topics say that I require only initially, but I want to do a refresher either annually or biannually. Another big piece of the puzzle is ensuring that your new worker orientation, safety training and orientation is very tight and very well done. So take a look at what you have as a list of topics that your new workers get trained on. Include those that are temporary workers because they're yours. Although you do not pay them, you have to treat them as yours if you're supervising their work. Make sure also that this helps you to tighten those job-specific training issues where, per your history that you reviewed, you notice that there's a standard operating procedure or a specific list of instructions for a specific job that is not being effective. A lot of injuries are occurring in that department. Then go ahead and tweak it and make sure that it's part of your safety activities for next year. Maybe taking the time to sit down with the supervisor of that department to change the complete list of instructions for that job specific or job task. And then you have a more clear view of what needs to be outsourced and what needs to be done in-house. So for most of these topics, you can do them either in your tailgates, and the bigger the company, the more repetition, right? And then you can also have a better view of what needs to be done or separated per department. So here is a list of your general topics. Here's a list of your special topics, right? Because not everybody will have bloodborne pathogens training, but everybody will need bloodborne pathogens awareness training. You go, awareness training. What if they're exposed to blood just because someone gets hurt at the manufacturing plant? That they're not healthcare, but they do need to know basic bloodborne pathogens prevention awareness. And you go, so maybe I should add this once a year. So make a list of general topics, make a list of specific or special topics that you may want to revisit. For example, ladder safety. Not everybody uses a ladder at work, but maybe you're thinking, wait a minute, everybody here has access to our ladders. Well, that gets you to take a look into, okay, for 2025, I'm going to really work on our ladder safety because we want to have a specific inventory of our ladders. We have to have a list of authorized people, and our authorized people are going to be the people that are actually trained for it. We're going to eliminate the use of ladders or the access to ladders for just anybody in the company. And that comes as a result of you looking at your past. Maybe you had 2 ladder near misses last year, and that should be prioritized. It should go to the top of your special topics that go into your 2025 training curriculum and safety activities for the year. So here's an example of one of these matrices that I do for my clients. So what we do is okay, so the company wants to do quarterly training, and they're going to pick, they made their list of topics, and they're going to pick which of these topics is going to be outsourced. So that could be a separate page that you put which topics are outsourced. And the rest of the topics, which are in the light orange, your head of department is going to conduct the training. And so there you have a list of departments, and when you see an A, that means annually. And when you can add other notes, for example, BE means before exposure occurs. So sometimes for ergonomics, for office workers, before you assign them to their office, they need to have actual training on their office setup, on the correct way to have their computer, their monitor, the light, etc. So that's why it says before exposure, right? And so this is a good example of how making a list, because you made a list of your topics, then you're going to divide them by quarters. I'm not saying that this is the only way to divide them, but you could see the need to do it bi-monthly. You could see the need to do it monthly. It just really depends on your budget, because it's paying all those workers to take time away from producing to actually either stand around and talk about the topic, or watch a video, or watch a presentation, plus taking a quiz, or do hands-on demonstrations. And so it really is up to you. But this is a good way of viewing how it should look for 2025. And also a way of seeing, for example, for this particular company, they were having a lot of slip, trip, and fall. So guess what we did? We prioritized it and put it for January. And in January is when we're going to go over slip, trip, and fall. How is it that you slip, trip, and fall? We talk about the mechanics of slipping and tripping and falling. And then we go into actually the prevention and the activities, the work activities that are causing our employees to slip, trip, and fall, and how we're going to stop that. And so this is how you get to prepare your matrix, prioritizing the topics that have created problems for you in the past. And so each year really should be different for you and for your company, or even for your departments. There are some other samples on different websites. And so when you get a copy of this, you'll see that you can find, for example, Contra Costa County Schools Insurance Group has a beautiful matrix. So this is another way of doing it. And I like to, that's why I put it here, because they did a good job. And so what they did is they followed Cal OSHA's training matrix. It's outdated because it doesn't include heat illness and some of the new topics that you have in the Cal OSHA main webpage. But for example, they did it also alphabetical order, starting with the training topic. And for incident investigation, they said initial, in person, and Zoom. So now they're going to explain how the training is going to take place, who is taking it. And then they place an X on the department where you will have people that need to be trained. In this case, the administration, and then custodians, educators, food service, grounds, instructional assistants, etc. So they did, the departments are in different columns, and they just place an X on who needs to receive training per topic. So I love that matrix as well. It's another very good way of doing it. And then, of course, after you have that matrix, then you get to go to your calendar and making sure that you place it on the calendar with a date. So now, speaking of calendars and dates, before I jump onto this new work orientation, many times things happen. The supervisor who's supposed to give the talk is sick, or you have to push that date for the next month because there was an incident, and you guys had to shut down for whatever reason. You couldn't do the training. My what I'm going to just tell you right now is make sure you reschedule it. Don't just let it go and skip it completely. Reschedule it. So it doesn't matter if you're doing a monthly safety activity that now happened within 2 weeks of each other. Well, you explain it's because we missed it on our specific date, and we're doing it right now. But don't skip, because then that's why you start having reoccurrence of injuries and illnesses. And the answer is because we didn't touch on that topic. So for the new employee safety orientation, you want to develop a list of the topics that you want to make sure that they sign on, that they received instruction and training. And so however you want to do this, I have another client. He has a very good system. Mind you, this man is technologically very savvy. And now we have AI. And I know one of the questions that one of you asked is, what's the best AI and software to use? So it's very easy to find safety software. So you just have to click on any Google search for safety softwares, and you'll find a lot of different softwares to get you to start assigning training, right? And my best bet is ask your insurance carrier or your broker, and they will tell you they have already, as part of the services. So for most employers, depending on how big or small, but for most of their clients, insurance brokers, insurance carriers will have an actual software that you can access training topics, training materials, to provide handouts, to open up PowerPoints and modify and customize. And mind you, the key is customizing, right? So make sure that you develop also a system on how to deliver this training topics. And it doesn't have to always be the same For example, the Code of Safe Practices and Enforcement Policies can be a quick explanation, but what I do with my clients is I inject it into a video, a 10-minute video, which is the explanation of your injury and illness prevention program. Because the injury and illness prevention program, you will see that the law requires that you explain it to workers. It is in there. Many of you do not know that. Well, I will throw in there an explanation of my Code of Safe Practices. So here I agree to abide by all company safety policies and the Code of Safe Practices. I also understand that failure to do so may result in disciplinary action and possible termination. So your human resources department will love this, because when someone breaks the rules, they have an actual document they can go back to it where employees sign that, right? So here is an extra good thing to keep in mind. Specific training requirements. Each of those training topics that we made a list of has specific bullet points. For example, for chemical safety, which in the safety world or the OSHA world we say is hazard communication, there are 7 elements that must be covered, and they are in the regulation. And no regulations are really wordy, but if you've been with me through the many years that we've been doing these webinars, you know that I'm big on reading it, because this is what guides how you put together your training session. So I'm going to say, what is this company's hazard communication program? So I'm going to take 2-3 minutes to explain that. Then what are the tasks in your work area? And if it's by department, so if I'm going only training one department, I'm talking about these guys who work a lot with solvents. So we talk about those hazardous substances. Where are they? Where are the drums? Where are the spill kits? How do we use them? We do hands-on versus classroom. Where can you find the written program? How do you detect the presence? So all of this that I'm looking at here, especially the red highlights, tells you these are the requirements for that specific training topic. And by the way, this one is just initial, but I do want you to take it as best practices to repeat this training once a year. And you get the hint, right? For example, here, when you do effective training, you know that you have to go over how to obtain and use safety data in sheets, right? And this is an example, just an excerpt of one of those safety data sheets. And this is what tells workers, listen, this is a corrosive chemical. It causes severe skin burns. That's why we want to store it locked up. Workers had never seen this safety data sheet. No wonder they were leaving bottles of this chemical everywhere, right? Because there was the lack of that safety reminder as to how to store it per the safety data sheet. And also that we need to have emergency fountains and safety showers. You're thinking, I haven't checked in that safety shower. I don't even know if it works, right? All of this gives you your priorities to work on. And 7, create your own safety calendar. So now that you've created a matrix, now you put a date on it. And so this is an example of how it can look like per the months of the year. It's always important to make it consistent. So if it's the first Tuesday of each month, or if it's the last Thursday of whatever quarter that lands on, if it's March, June, September, and December, make sure it is always consistent as to dates, and then you make it stick, right? Safety inspections should be part of the safety activity calendar. So you will see there that I added as part of not just the training, but the safety inspection. By no means this is going to cover all of the trainings that you need from that matrix that we reviewed in OSHA. But it does cover those, for example, that you're going to bring an outside consultant to do the training, because you saw that for last year, no one is really taking a look at, let's say, how to do lockout, tag out, and people are skipping steps. So now this year, I'm bringing someone to go over with my workers, or heat illness, because most of my workers do not know how to take care of someone in need. And I want to make sure that we review those first aid procedures with someone else, right? To make sure we're doing it the right way. So this calendar you have in your screen is derived once you have your matrix, your list of topics, then your matrix. Now you're putting dates on it. And for this is just for outsourcing. Who is going to come help me during January, March, May, July, September, and November. And the rest of the topics I'll cover in-house. So now you have these two, the matrix and an internal calendar and a quarterly calendar that happens from an outsourced consultant that comes and helps us with safety inspections and other training topics. So safety committees are important. They're a great idea because they help you to get together quarterly at least. Not all of you have safety committee meetings. They're not required, but they do become a great source of information to continue to change, add, and modify your safety training calendars and curriculums for the year. So those are, when you get copy of these slides, you will see that I have there the requirements of your safety committees. So they are a great idea. So last but not least, why choose an independent safety consultant? Remember that they we have this chance to tailor your safety programs, to customize them to your operations after we get to know you, right? We want to make sure that we provide you with materials that are customized to your actual equipment and tools. So what I do is I go out there, and once I get to know you and once we do safety inspections, we start taking pictures and customizing those handouts with your own pictures. And it makes a world of difference because most of your softwares used through your insurance carriers, you will find out that the handouts have pictures that maybe don't apply to you, right? And so you want to make sure that those handouts are editable so that you can put your own pictures. For example, ergonomics training based on your specific job tasks and workstations. So you want to bring someone, an ergonomist or someone with the training and the experience to help you tweak those issues for better ergonomics. If that's what you're having a lot of strains and sprains and repetitive motion injuries, that's very, very important. I love doing ergonomic work. Ladder safety, addressing the specific types of ladders. That is huge. Maybe you have 3, 4 types of ladders. You have podium ladders and you have extension ladders and you have older ladders and new generation ladders. Well, you have to do training on each of those. So I really highly advise that you bring in a consultant. And many times, whoever sells you those ladders will bring the person on site to talk about their own ladder. So it's not just paying also. You can get a lot of free outside help from manufacturers, representatives, especially with fall protection and personal protective equipment and ladders. So make sure that you also look into that, because if you use their products, they will send you someone to talk about it, and they'll be happy to do it. No one size fits all for software or generic safety topics as your only option, and programs developed with intimate knowledge for your operations. So these are more of the good things of getting that independent safety consultant with you on board. For me, it's a huge plus to get to know your workers. Then I get a lot of information from them too, because they feel comfortable talking to me about some of the issues that are going on. So every time I do a presentation, they'll come right afterwards and say, you know what, how you said that this is required, but we don't have it. For example, I had a worker who came after one of the training sessions for back injury prevention, and he said, we really do need a forklift. We requested it, but right now there's no budget. So we kind of get it whenever it is available from the other departments. And the rest of the time we're using pallet jacks, and I'm stacking them really high, and my back hurts because to push them or pull them is just very, very hard. And it's been 3 months and I'm starting to feel pain. And you said that for anything that starts creating problems, we should speak up. And yes, sure enough, that allowed the supervisor to go take a look at it and say, you know what, it is too much. But the culture inside that department was of, don't be a baby, don't say anything, just push the darn heavy equipment and just be done with it. Where when the supervisor got this information, he realized it is a priority for us to get a forklift in this department. And in the meantime, we're going to assign 2 people for this particular station. And voila, we avoided that initial pain that we get a lot with ergonomics or repetitive motion to be tackled at the moment when it was needed. So it did not go from stage 1 to stage 2 to having an actual injury, a back injury that went on disability or lost time from work. So that's what I want for you guys. That's what is important. Make sure that you get on board with OSHA's e-tool. This is the last thing that I have for you on this presentation, which is what's required. And with that, I will stop. It's 12:01. And I just want to make sure that everyone got, oh yeah, the last thing I want to say, guys, AI is great, but if you're not super well versed with safety regulations, safety requirements, AI many times, because they're a language-based model, they will spit out things that are not accurate. So be very careful. We're still in the initial stages of how AI can help your workplaces. I'm all for it. I think anything that is new is good to change and evolve with, but make sure you double check anything that you are getting done through AI. And with that, thank you so much to all of you for being here. We have more questions. I'll stay for another 5 more minutes, and I see some people are posting things in the chat. Thank you, Veronica, for facilitating. You're awesome. Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Thank you so much, Alba. And please don't forget to please fill out the evaluation. It's so important for us to hear your feedback. It's in the chat, but you'll also receive an email reminder to complete it, as well as the slides from today's presentation. And we did have in the chat, Matthew, who had asked, or in the Q&A, who had asked recommendations for no-cost forklift training videos. I did include one from State Fund, but if you have any other recommendations, Alba, we can also send that in the email.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Try to have your forklift recertification. It has to be done through a hands-on evaluation every 3 years. Try to have it in-house. That's one of those that I do not like for you to continue to outsource, to pay someone to come in and do your recertification of your workers, of your drivers, of your forklift or power industrial truck drivers, because I feel that you know your facility, you know the traffic, you know the issues. So there's nothing like having an in-house trainer. So there are programs for train to trainer where they will sell you the actual package, instructor package, the forms, the presentation, etc. And if you need a recommendation, I'll send you a couple. But it is important that you start doing your forklift training and recertification every 3 years in-house.